So imagine stepping up to a microphone in this um, crowded, completely silent auditorium.
Oh, wow. No pressure at all.
Right. You're standing in front of one of the most globally renowned philosophical thinkers of the 20th century. I mean, people have traveled across oceans, totally abandoned their daily lives just to sit in this room and listen.
Just hear him spook.
Exactly. So you take a deep breath and you decide you aren't going to ask about some, abstract theory. You're going to ask the ultimate, most audacious, just the most direct question possible.
I love this setup. What do you ask?
You lean into the microphone and you say, kindly give a straight reply. Does God exist or not? Yes or no?
Oh, man. I mean, you can almost feel the collective inhale of the audience just picturing that exact moment. It's the ultimate binary question, right?
Totally.
It demands an absolute answer. No dodging behind metaphors, no theological loopholes. Just yes or no.
And that tension is exactly where we're starting today. The source for our deep dive is this really remarkable transcript from the official J. Krishnamurti archives.
It's an incredible piece of history.
It really is. It captures the precise moment an audience member challenged him with that exact question. And for you listening, our mission today is to unpack Krishnamurti's radical, entirely uncompromising response.
Because he definitely refuses to simply hand over a yes or no.
Right. Instead, he uses the question as this, almost like a crowbar, to completely dismantle the foundations of human faith. He uses it to expose our deepest psychological fears and to really redefine what it actually means to be a self-reliant human being.
Before we go any further, though, we should probably establish the parameters of this deep dive.
Good idea.
We are not here to take a theological stance, right? Nor are we declaring what is, objectively true or false about the cosmos. Our focus is entirely on examining the philosophical and psychological framework that Krishnamurti constructs in this specific transcript.
Yeah, we're just looking at his arguments.
Exactly. And this raises an important question right from the start. Why does a philosopher refuse a simple yes or no?
Right. Why not just answer it?
Well, because his response doesn't just tackle the concept of a deity in a vacuum. He uses the prompt to interrogate the entire biological and sociological structure of how human beings manufacture truth.
It fundamentally pulls the rug out from under the listener. I mean, to understand his ultimate answer regarding the existence of God, we have to rewind the tape a bit.
We do. We have to start where he starts.
Which is an investigation into the origin of the concept itself.
Yeah.
He poses this massive reversal. He asks, basically, did God create man or did man create God?
It's such a bold starting point. He begins by establishing this massive historical baseline to show just how ingrained this concept is in the human psyche.
Oh, he goes way back.
Right. He points out that humanity has clung to the idea of a supreme protector for millennia. He references the ancient Greeks, the Sumerians.
He even wonders aloud to the audience if the concept of a singular, omnipotent God is actually present in the Upanishads.
Yeah, the foundational ancient Sanskrit texts of Hindu philosophy. He asks if it's really there or if it was layered onto the culture much later by, human anxiety.
He is painting a picture of a species that has been obsessed with this idea for as long as we've had language. But then he traps the audience in this massive logical contradiction.
This part is brilliant.
It is. He says, look at the blueprint of your concept of God. You define this entity as omnipotent, omniscient, eternal, merciful, completely just, and entirely good.
And fundamentally, you believe this creator made humanity in his own image.
Right. And then Krishnamurti points to the reality of the human condition. It says, well, if a joyful, omnipotent entity created you, why are you like this?
Why are you so miserable?
Exactly. If a divine architect designed humanity, we should be walking around full of excitement, beauty, and absolute delight. But as he bluntly reminds the room, we are not.
Not at all.
We're largely anxious, combative, and just drowning in sorrow. So he asks the audience this brutal question, why would an extraordinary, perfect entity create you just to lead such a terrible, agonizing life?
The cognitive dissonance there is profound, and it leads him to his conclusion on the origin of the divine.
Which is what?
Well, since the human experience clearly doesn't reflect the joy and perfection of a divine creator, the alternative mechanism must be at play. We have manufactured God.
We made it up.
Yeah, and he points to the sheer sociological volume of this manufacturing process. He notes that in India alone, he was told there are over 300,000 local deities. I mean, the human mind is endlessly prolific when it comes to inventing gods.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I want to push back on the psychology here a little bit.
Sure, go for it.
If I build a house with my own hands to give myself shelter from a storm, I don't suddenly start worshiping the drywall and the roof.
Right, you know it's a house.
Exactly. I am fully aware that I built it as a tool. So why does Krishnamurti argue that we are completely blind to our own invention when it comes to God?
That's a great question. Think about the underlying mechanism of why the house was built versus why the deity is built.
Okay.
You build a house to protect your physical body from rain, but your thought process builds God to protect your psyche from the existential terror of chaos and mortality.
Oh, that's a huge difference.
Right. Krishnamurti argues that thought, our cognitive engine, created God entirely out of fear. You look at a dangerous, unpredictable universe where illness, death, and random suffering happen daily.
And we just can't handle that.
No, the human brain is a meaning-making machine. It cannot tolerate that level of random chaos. It literally induces panic. So, out of a deep psychological desire for absolute safety and security, your thoughts construct a cosmic protector.
It reminds me of a child whose bedroom is pitch black. The shadows look like monsters, and the child's brain is just flooding with cortisol.
Exactly, total panic mode.
So to cope with the overwhelming fear, the child invents a powerful, invincible, imaginary friend to stand guard at the door. And it serves a vital psychological function in that moment.
It does, it calms them down.
But what Krishnamurti is saying is that over time, the child grows up, completely forgets they invented the guardian, and actually becomes terrified of the imaginary friend's rules.
Yes.
They spend their whole life trying not to anger the phantom they created to soothe themselves.
That is the precise psychological trap Krishnamurti is illuminating. The grand tragedy here is that thought turns around and worships the very image it just projected onto the void.
Wow.
If you create an image out of your own fear-based desire for safety and then you bow down to it, you are not worshiping the divine. You are basically worshiping yourself. You are bowing down to your own mental projection and labeling it God.
You are worshiping your own fear. That is an incredibly confronting idea for anyone who considers themselves devout.
It really is.
And it forces the conversation into a harsh critique of what we actually do with that fear-based worship in our day-to-day lives, which takes us straight into the transactional mechanics of organized religion.
Right, because once the mind has invented a supreme entity to shield it from the chaos of the universe, a new anxiety emerges.
How do I keep it happy?
Exactly. How do I keep this entity happy so it doesn't abandon me? And this is the birth of the ritualistic transaction.
Krishnamurti calls out very specific, universally recognizable human practices to make this point. He talks about people flocking to local shrines in Rome or making pilgrimages to Tirupati.
Which is a major city in India famous for its temple, right?
Yeah, millions of people go there and donate immense amounts of wealth. He paints this vivid picture of a devotee putting their life savings in a bag, offering elaborate garlands, performing endless prostrations, and reciting specific mantras.
Doing all the steps.
Right. And then he cuts through all the pageantry with one biting question. He just asks, do you really think gods want your money?
He is exposing the absolute absurdity of the negotiations.
Oh, so blunt.
It is. You have conceived of an omnipotent, universe-spanning consciousness, and your method of interacting with it is essentially slipping it a $20 bill and some flowers.
Like bribing a bouncer.
Yeah. Krishnamurti is arguing that this behavior has absolutely nothing to do with sacredness. It is a commercial transaction born entirely out of panic. You are trying to buy a cosmic insurance policy.
I understand the logic, but put yourself in the listener's shoes for a second.
Okay.
Calling this a tragedy feels a little lacking in empathy. People are just trying to survive in an objectively brutal world. They are just seeking a tiny bit of comfort.
That's a fair point.
It makes me think of someone who is fundamentally broken inside, someone who has no idea how to be emotionally vulnerable or genuinely present in a relationship.
Right.
So instead of doing the agonizing work of opening up, they just keep buying their partner lavish, expensive gifts. They're trying to purchase the feeling of love because they don't know how to generate it. It's definitely an evasion, but it's a deeply human, somewhat tragic evasion.
What's fascinating here is that Krishnamurti is entirely aware of that human tendency, but he refuses to validate it as an acceptable way to live.
He doesn't let them off the hook.
Not at all. He views the buying of the relationship not just as sad, but as a destructive evasion of reality. He points out that loving an abstraction, like loving a concept of God in the sky, is incredibly easy.
Because it doesn't ask anything real of you.
Exactly. It demands zero fundamental change in your character. You can donate money to a temple on Sunday and ruthlessly exploit your employees on Monday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Loving an abstraction has no real meaning because it allows you to escape the excruciatingly hard work of actual internal transformation.
So if the transaction is out, if the rituals and the money bags are completely stripped away, what is his definition of something truly sacred?
His definition is entirely internal and relational. He states that if you genuinely love, meaning a state of being completely free from vanity, arrogance, and selfishness, that very love is God.
That's the sacred.
Yes, that is the sacred. You don't need to travel hundreds of miles to Tirupati or Rome to find it because it's not an external object to be discovered or bought.
But freeing yourself completely from vanity, arrogance, and selfishness is excruciating.
It's the hardest thing a person can do.
It requires tearing down your entire ego. It is infinitely harder than just dropping a gold coin in a donation box.
Which is exactly why humanity prefers the coin. We desperately look for an external savior because the internal work of unmaking our own selfishness is just too demanding.
This creates a really fascinating pivot in the transcript,
Mm-hmm.
because when Krishnamurti so effectively dismantles the external rituals and the external deity, the audience does what any defensive human would do.
They retreat.
They retreat inward. They look for the divine spark hidden inside themselves. And this sparks the most heated, intense debate of the entire session. We move into his deconstruction of the ultimate internal safety net, the soul.
Right. The audience can feel their external theological structures collapsing, so they immediately build a barricade around their internal structure.
Yep.
An audience member actually challenges him by bringing up the concept of the Atman.
Right. And for you listening, if you're unfamiliar with the term, the Atman is a Sanskrit word that fundamentally refers to the inner self, the eternal core of a person, basically the soul.
And the audience member even drops a name to give their point some authority, right?
Yeah, they mentioned they've learned about this permanent inner light from prominent historical figures like Annie Besant, who was a massive driving force in the theosophical movement in India.
So the audience is essentially saying, fine, the external God might be a projection, but surely this eternal divine essence inside of me is real.
And Krishnamurti's response to this deeply revered concept is genuinely shocking.
What does he say?
He makes a terrible pun.
No way.
Yes, he playfully and entirely dismisses the gravity of their belief. He responds by asking, soul. Which soul? The soul of a shoe.
Oh, wow. He is deliberately stripping the concept of its sacred aura to force the audience to look at it objectively.
And reading the transcript, you can literally feel the temperature in the room spike.
People get mad.
Oh, they get incredibly agitated. Multiple people start speaking over each other, getting highly defensive. Krishnamurti actually stops and calls out their physiological reaction in real time.
Really? He addresses it directly.
He does. He says, at last, you're all getting excited because your belief is being attacked. He highlights that they aren't engaging with his philosophical challenge at all. They are just experiencing a visceral threat response because their safety net is being pulled away.
That makes perfect sense neurologically. They are reacting as if they are in physical danger because, to the ego, the death of a core belief is a form of death.
Right.
They desperately need to believe there is something inside them that is permanent, unworldly, and immune to the suffering of their daily lives. But Krishnamurti refuses to indulge the fantasy. He attacks the actual, practical utility of this belief.
So what does this all mean for you and me? I mean, I've challenged his lack of sympathy here.
Okay, let's hear it.
Let's say I am going through a terrible period in my life. I'm dealing with grief. I'm stressed about my survival. The world feels incredibly chaotic and hostile. Believing that I have a beautiful, permanent, untouchable soul inside me is the only thing keeping me from a total mental breakdown.
It's a lifeline.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is a highly effective coping mechanism. Why is he so intent on ripping that away from a suffering person?
Because a coping mechanism, by its very neurobiological definition, is a numbing agent. It is a painkiller.
Okay, but painkillers are useful.
Sure, but think about it this way. If you have a shattered bone in your leg and you take a massive dose of painkillers, the agony might recede, but the bone is still shattered.
Right.
If you use that numbness to ignore the injury and keep walking on it, you will permanently destroy the leg. Krishnamurti views the belief in the soul as the ultimate spiritual painkiller.
Ah, I see.
He asks the audience to look at their actual reality. You are miserable, confused, lonely, and in agony. That is your daily existence. What possible point is there in overlaying a belief in a super Atman on top of that misery?
Because it doesn't actually alter the fundamental reality of the misery.
Exactly. It just masks it. You are actively living in agony, but you are comforting yourself with a fairy tale that a secret part of you is divine and untouched. He argues that truth cannot possibly coexist with this kind of delusion. He uses a very specific word, actually. He calls it childish.
Ouch.
Yeah, to assume you have a divine permanent essence while you are simultaneously being eaten alive by daily anxieties is to put a pleasant bandage over a gaping, infected wound and declare yourself cured.
Childish. Just belief. Belief. Belief.
Mm.
Those are his exact words.
It's so uncompromising.
He is demanding that humanity stop relying on comforting, unverified assumptions. He is pushing the audience to ask themselves, don't you actually want to find out the truth of your existence rather than just blindly holding on to a belief because it warms you up at night?
And this relentless dismantling leaves the audience in a very vulnerable position.
Totally exposed.
Right. When you are stripped of your external God and you are robbed of your internal permanent soul, the psychological panic peaks. The natural human instinct in a state of freefall is to look around frantically for an adult in the room.
They need a leader.
Exactly. They seek out established authorities who can tell them everything is going to be okay.
Which ushers us into his absolute takedown of spiritual leaders, gurus, and the profound illusion of language.
This is a great part of the transcript.
It really is. In it, a very frustrated audience member tries to bring up universally revered spiritual figures. They point to Ramana Maharshi and Ramakrishna.
Both massive, historically significant mystics in India.
Yeah, known for living extraordinarily ascetic, simple lives and supposedly attaining ultimate enlightenment. The audience member is desperate for a proxy. They are basically saying, look, maybe I can't find the truth, but these guys did. Can't we just follow them?
And Krishnamurti's response to this appeal to authority is breathtakingly blunt.
He shuts it down.
Completely shuts it down. He tells the audience to completely erase these people from their minds. He says, what value has their life to you? You have your life to live, not their life.
It is such a sudden, sharp slap of reality. You cannot spiritually outsource your existence. You cannot live off the resume of a dead mystic.
But you can't.
But the conversation then transitions into a really profound linguistic philosophy. An audience member trying to catch Krishnamurti in a contradiction points out that he himself uses phrases like timeless eternity when giving talks.
Trying to catch him in a trap.
Right. And Krishnamurti immediately fires back, I have said it, don't believe it.
Which is so funny. The audience member actually protests, saying that's not fair. They feel tricked.
And Krishnamurti concedes that it might seem unfair, but he takes the opportunity to explain a massive cognitive trap. He introduces this concept, the word is not that, like the word tree is not the tree.
That is so fundamental to his philosophy.
It is. You can describe the concept of eternity, you can write thousands of books describing love, but the linguistic description is inherently fatally flawed because it is merely a symbolic representation of a reality.
Right. He uses a beautiful sensory metaphor to ground this abstraction. He tells them you can speak extensively about a profound love you feel, and the person listening can absorb all your words, but the flower isn't there in the language.
The actual experience.
Exactly. The actual perfume of the living experience cannot be transmitted through vocabulary.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because I think this is a trap we all fall into daily.
Oh, absolutely.
Imagine going to an exclusive, world-renowned Michelin star restaurant. The waiter hands you a beautifully embossed menu with incredible, vivid descriptions of the food. Wood-fired, dry-aged, perfectly seasoned.
Sounds amazing.
But instead of ordering the meal, you just sit at the table, tear off a piece of the paper menu, chew on it, swallow it, and then walk out the door telling everyone you just had the best steak of your life.
That's exactly it.
We are literally eating the menu. We are so easily satisfied with the linguistic description of truth that we completely bypass the agonizing, visceral experience of discovering it ourselves.
And that is the exact neurobiological and psychological trap of the guru.
How so?
Well, when you rely on a religious or political leader, when you read their best-selling books or listen to their lectures, you are just accepting their words. You are eating their menu.
You weren't doing the work.
Right. The danger, Krishnamurti argues, is that this dependency causes mental and spiritual atrophy. If you never force yourself to navigate the unknown, your capacity for resilience degrades. Listening to a guru talk about truth is not experiencing truth. It is just being pacified by another human being's vocabulary.
He explicitly points out how culturally pervasive this is, noting that the world is littered with gurus, one after the other, endless people claiming to hold the map. He genuinely pleads with the audience to ask themselves, like, why do we endlessly insist on following?
We follow because we are terrified of being lost. We want someone else to forge the path and guarantee our safety.
Yeah.
But we have reached the ultimate precipice of Krishnamurti's philosophy here. If you strip away the external God, if you dissolve the internal soul, if you abandon the rituals and you fire all the gurus, what is left?
Right. How does a human being actually navigate existence? Which brings us to the final, incredibly stark imagery of the transcript. The jungle of life and the demand for absolute self-reliance. Krishnamurti finishes tearing down the artificial structures and finally gives the audience a metaphor for what reality actually is. He compares human existence to a dense, literal jungle.
And it's crucial to understand he doesn't mean a curated botanical garden with neat little paths and helpful signposts.
No gift shop at the end.
No, none of that. He means an overgrown, chaotic, perilous jungle where the sky is hidden and every step is uncertain.
He tells the room that if you find yourself deep in this jungle, there is absolutely nobody coming to lead you out. There is no divine helicopter coming to rescue you.
You're on your own.
You have to hack your own way through the brush. You cannot rely on a belief in a benevolent God, and you cannot rely on some innate, magical goodness inside yourself. He states that to survive the jungle, what you actually require is vitality, vigor, and sheer strength.
By systematically stripping away every single crutch, the scriptures, the saviors, the coping mechanisms, he is forcing the individual into a state of total exposure. Just you and the raw chaos of existence.
I have to be honest, hearing the philosophy laid out like this, it is terrifying.
Oh, it's brutal.
You are taking away my deeply comforting beliefs. You are telling me my permanent soul is a neurobiological illusion. You are invalidating all the experts I look up to, and you are dropping me in the middle of a hostile jungle without a map, a compass, or a guide.
Yep.
And you are telling me that this absolute isolation is the only path to true freedom.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it certainly sounds bleak to the ego, but it is actually the most profound message of empowerment one can receive.
How is it empowering?
Let's look at the mechanism of that vitality he mentions. When you walk through life relying on a guru or a belief system, you are essentially sleepwalking. Your senses are dull because you believe the safety net will catch you.
Oh, that makes sense.
But the moment you realize there is no safety net, that the jungle is real and you are entirely alone in it, your neurobiology shifts. Your senses heighten.
You become hyper-aware.
Exactly. You become acutely aware of every snapped twig and every shifting shadow. By forcefully abandoning the dependency on fear-based thoughts, you unlock a massive reservoir of innate human vitality that was previously suppressed by your own complacency.
You literally have no choice but to wake up. You stop being a follower, and you become an active participant in your own survival.
Precisely. You become completely and utterly responsible for your own consciousness. Krishnamurti tells the audience that if you realize this deeply in your heart, not just nodding along intellectually, but feeling the immense crushing weight of that total responsibility, it transforms you.
It changes everything.
You stop cowering. You become a free human being capable of, as he says, walking straight.
Free to walk straight. That is such a powerful, resonant image to end on. You are no longer bowing down to a statue of your own making.
No.
You are no longer hunched over, cowering behind a guru's robes. You are standing upright, bearing the full weight of reality right in the middle of the jungle. It is an incredibly hard way to live, but as he casually tosses out at the end of the debate, it's so simple when you think of it all.
The mechanism is simple. The execution, though, is the work of a lifetime.
It truly is. Let's take a moment to pull all of this together and recap the journey we've just taken today.
Sounds good.
We started with a microphone and a demand for a binary answer regarding God's existence. Through Krishnamurti's relentless framework, we explored the psychological mechanism of how human beings, terrified by the chaos of reality, invented a cosmic protector out of sheer panic.
We examine how transactional religion, like paying off a deity with rituals, is really an evasion of the agonizing work of true selfless love.
Right, and we faced the deeply uncomfortable reality that clinging to the concept of a permanent soul is often just a painkiller that masks our daily misery without actually curing it.
And finally, we saw why we must throw away the Michelin star menus handed to us by gurus and face the dense jungle of existence relying entirely on our own awakened vitality.
It is a complete and total paradigm shift. It is the transition from desperately seeking comfort to courageously demanding truth.
It really is.
So for you listening, we want to leave you with a challenge. The next time you feel a wave of anxiety, the next time your life feels chaotic and you instinctively reach for a comforting belief, a self-help book, or the advice of an expert on a show like ours, just pause.
Just for a second.
Ask yourself, are you bowing down to an imaginary friend created by your own fear? Are you desperately looking for a leader to walk through the jungle so you don't have to?
And to push that introspection even further, consider everything in your life right now that you claim to know or deeply understand. Your political beliefs, your relationships, your core principles. How much of that knowledge is the actual visceral living experience with its real perfume, and how much of it is just you comfortably chewing on the word tree?
Are you brave enough to experience the reality, or are you just going to hold on to the map? The next time you find yourself standing at the microphone of your own life, demanding a straight yes or no answer to a complex question, remember that the only real answer might require you to turn your back on the crowd, walk straight into the dense brush of the jungle, and find out for yourself.